Guyana, land of many waters with 6 races living together.
Globuspan is a Guyanese dialogue moving towards the realization of one nation in one Guyana. It's a platform that offers an all-inclusive discussion, with the pros, the cons, the ones that is taken aside, and the ones that stand in the middle. Globuspan believes agreeing and disagreeing are part of the nation's building. Globuspan believes that every Guyanese voice is part of the nation's building. As we span the globe for voices from the diasporas and those living home, we stand on our commitment that we are all Guyanese working towards one nation in one Guyana.
Coffee and Dr. Jagan, Bobby, she gave us our great sons. Rohan Kanhai, Coffee and Dr. Jagan.
As the world turns on its axis bringing changes, we as Guyanese must adopt to those changes for a better Guyana for all. Globuspan stands on its axis with its belief that one nation, one Guyana, one destiny must include voices from all corners of Guyana.
Land of many waters with 6 races living together.
Welcome to Globuspan Television tonight, and to all our listeners, thank you for tuning in to us as we start this program here, the first after our clock has been turned forward or pushed forward. We must say thanks to Noir Singh for making this program available, and to Devin Bisoon and Ryan Gobin, our technical directors. And thanks to Ms. Desir, Member of Parliament and the Shadow Minister of Foreign Affairs in the Cabinet. Tonight we'll discuss a wide range of topics. But before that, you can tune in to us via Facebook and YouTube. Make sure you go there. And on top of that, we are a fair and balanced network. And the views expressed by our guests tonight are those solely of hers and not of the management of Globuspan Television. Tonight, again, we welcome Ms. Amanda Walton-Desir. Welcome, Ms. Desir. Ms. Desir, you hearing me? Your mute is on. Ms. Desir, your mute is on. She's not hearing me.
Good evening, Dr. Rose. Are you hearing me?
I'm hearing you now, yes. I was telling you, welcome to the program.
Oh, thank you. I don't know. We had a glitch in the technology just now.
Okay. Now, let me clean house first. I have a number of requests from some of our listeners here, and I'm sure maybe they're PNC listeners because they want to know about the party. So let me just clear that off. This year, the party will be holding its Congress in August. What date will be the Congress? Do you know?
No, a definitive date has not yet been set.
But the next question, are all preparations in place for whenever the date is set?
I could not confirm whether all preparations are in place. I know that there is a notification from the GS that there are moves afoot to start to prepare. You know, there are several administrative processes that attend the holding of a conference. And so that is the last correspondence that I saw from our General Secretary.
Okay. Now, the other question is, one of our guests wants to know, are all positions available for contest, including the leadership?
Oh, absolutely. The constitution of the People's National Congress is set up in such a way that any person who believes that they are desirous, or who's nominated actually to contest for a particular position, and there are several at the executive level, they're free to do so. There's a clear process. You have to be nominated. You have to accept that nomination, and it's taken from there.
Well, that would be my next question. The person wants to know what it takes for a leader to be nominated. You have to have signatures from the delegates. You have to have X amount of delegates backing you. The person wants to know.
It's simple. A party group has to nominate you.
Just one party group, any place
A single nomination is enough to put you in contention.
Okay. The other question, do you know of any prospective candidates for the leadership?
Well, look, like I said, the Constitution is drafted in such a way that every member of the party who believes that they are interested in any leadership position, I mean, the leader of the party being the most senior, but there are certainly other offices within the executive that people run for.
In 2010, President Granger was elected the presidential candidate of the party, and Robert Corbin remains the leader of the party, and he handed over sometime later on to President Granger. Could there be a presidential candidate and a leader at the same time, this time here, do you think?
You're asking me if there would be?
No, if there would be, yes. Like what
happened? I think the leader of the opposition, who is the leader of the PNC, has made this position quite clear. And I believe that he has said in public spaces that if there is someone who may be a better fit for the presidential candidate, that he would certainly support that person. I believe that was reported across the media. So, there's no mystery as to where his mind is as to what the position of the party could be. It certainly is a possibility.
That's good. That's very good news. You said something here a lot of people don't know. The other question is this: is there a deadline for someone to announce their leadership?
If there is a deadline?
Yeah, before the Congress.
Well, you certainly have to be nominated. This is a process, You just don't wake up and decide that you're doing this. You certainly have to be nominated. Until then, and until such time, the PNC has a leader. And until such time as a Congress is called and the members of the PNC believe that they want a new leader, they will so elect it. I'm not sure what is all of the intrigue about this process about. It's pretty straightforward. The PNC has a written constitution, and therefore all of the positions, the procedures, etc., clearly laid out there. So this is not a mystery.
Okay. Well, not everybody.
The other side.
Not well, not everybody probably is aware of the Constitution and what the leadership entails and the process and so forth. So, but those are questions, and you cleared up very, very well. I must say that.
I'm happy to help.
Yeah. Now, in 2025, sometime there will be an election. Is the party ready for one?
I don't know that any party is ever ready for an election. I think certainly we are very aware that there's an upcoming election and that they're imminent. And we have to be prepared as well for the government to call one suddenly. And so certainly a party always has to be in preparation mode. You have to operate as if there's an election tomorrow. And so I don't know that you're ever prepared per se, but certainly I think the membership of the PNC is cognizant of what is required and of where we are at this point in the country's development and what is needed to take the party and the country forward.
So the party is ready if the snap election is called. That's what you're saying.
I'm saying that we would have to be, because a party, in my view, has to be in a state of readiness.
Now, as I know and you know, and a lot of people know, you were born of the quarantine. Number 50 village?
Yes, 50 village quarantine, Leeds village.
But Leeds, okay. But you grew up in Linden?
Yes, I moved to Linden with my family when I was I was 10 years old, I think, yes.
So which constituency are you representing? I was told, and this is what I was told because I'm a Barbician myself, the people of Barbish want you to represent them.
I am a national top-up candidate, so I represent everybody. I represent whoever needs representation. Of course, our system is hybrid, and so there is a mixed system of MPs drawn directly from the constituencies, and then there is the national top-up. And so I'm drawn from there, and I represent all who need representing. And look, this is a long simmering debate between my folks on the quarantine and my Linden folks. And so Linden, of course, is my hometown. And I say that Leeds was my born town. So we sort of settled that. But both places absolutely made me into the person that I am today. Leeds is a predominantly mixed village. It's a mixed bag of Afro-Guyanese, Indo-Guyanese, and a very large mixed population. And so what that gave me is really an early steeping in multiculturalism and understanding and embracing diverse cultures. Our neighbor to the right was Miss Chando. And so it was never, you had the opportunity to interact. You went to Chando's house, and if, she felt like she came over, and it really was an experience to have. And then moving to Linden really grounded me in terms of my education experience in life in a township. So, it has come together very nicely to mold me into who I am today.
Why did you decide to study law?
So I had a best friend by the name of Homeshwari Ramphal. Homeshwari Ramphal was my best friend. She passed when she was 16. And I remember one day, we've known each other from Form 1. And so one day, Homesh and I, we usually walk home from Mackenzie High School. She lived in Rainbow City at the time. And we were deciding on careers. And I said, since I was 9, I felt as if I wanted to do law. And she was like, me too. And so we made a pact that we were going to be both lawyers one day. But unfortunately, she passed at when we were 16 of renal failure. So I think it's something that I've always known,
Well, you have done it, so she's probably smiling wherever she is with you right now.
Yes.
Now, the other question I want to say to our listeners, Leeds, as you know, is 50, 51, 52, and 53 villages. Those are predominantly Black villages, even though they said some are mixed. As a matter of fact, the population there, Blacks in those villages are 66%. But 53 village now has gone to the other NDC. Are you aware of that? So this means that the Black population in that village has been reduced. In that NDC has been reduced. My question to you is this. In Region 6, we have 19 NDCs.
Mm-hmm.
One more than, I think 2 more than Georgetown, Region 4.
Mm-hmm.
Now, as you know, Paris, Girardeau, Portland, that's where my mother parents are from. That's where family is from. Predominantly Black areas. Then from there you have Lancaster, Manchester, Liverpool, I'm not going to write, Oxtyle and those villages, predominantly Black area again. Then comes to Limnere, Norney, Kildonan, predominantly Black areas again. Then Eversham, Kilturn, Brighton, Black areas again. But the PP won 18 of the 19 districts. The only district that did not win in the NDC was Lancaster Oxtyle district. How did that happen?
I think the assessment is a little bit skewed. Of course, we indicated from the outset that we would contest only in certain areas. I think, and that is what was done. And so to sort of parrot Barry Jagdio's rhetoric, I believe, or the PPP's rhetoric in terms of winning X amount out of so many when only a certain number was contested, then, it may be skewed. What I will say is this, though. We know and we've seen from, for example, Jamaica recently, that traditionally local government elections suffer from a low voter turnout.
Yeah,
And
all
it is certainly something that we will have to do more education on. And for me, it's not even about a PPP area or a predominantly black area or a predominantly Indian area, because the other flaw in your assessment is that because this is a particular area, it will support a particular party. I believe that Guyanese are moving away from that type of politics, particularly when you see that recently the misfortunes and the suffering, it no longer is confined to a race of people. This is now across the ethnic divide. This is a question of a government deliberately creating a system of the haves and the have-nots. And so I believe that Guyanese are awakening to that reality. And this is why you're seeing the current administration fumbling, to rouse racist and ethnic sentiments, because they realize that Guyanese are awakening, and that Guyanese are realizing that by and large, they want a better life. And in the context of local democracy, I am hopeful that we begin to understand the importance of local democracy. And this is where a strong civic education program is important, because I don't think we have done a good enough job of educating the population on the whole. And as you've pointed out, indeed, it is a problem throughout the world about the importance of local government. What concerns me is that the current administration is not aiding in the promotion of local democracy, because you see a sustained program by the administration of going into NDCs and undermining and bypassing the councillors, etc. So to set up more what I call a cult of personality type leadership, and that is dangerous on so many levels. So for me, it is, and my focus would primarily be on educating our people as to why local democracy is something that is important, why it is something that ought to be fought for and jealously guarded, because nobody knows the needs of a community like the people in the community. And so local democracy affords an opportunity of a for us, by us approach to governance of your locality. So we have to do some more work in terms of educating our population generally on why it is important.
You are the shadow minister in Parliament for Foreign Affairs. Foreign Affairs is like the eyes and ears of the country. Now, if your government, your party is elected to government tomorrow and you are given that ministry, what would it look like? What will be your focus or your priorities?
It would first be to clearly articulate a foreign policy direction for this country. There is none at the moment. It's characterized by a highly transactional, just in time and for the moment approach. And that cannot be. The country has to have a North Star as it relates to how it intends to execute its foreign policy. Remembering that your foreign policy generally is in pursuit of your national interests and your national objective. And so it would even be more important for us to first have a national objective outlined. It appears as though the national objective at the moment is to enrich as many friends and family and favorites as is possible, and to effect, as it were, the largest cash transfer, wealth transfer to the hands of a few, and creating oligarchs in this society. That seems to be where the national interest is. The other issue is that we have to staff our diplomatic missions abroad. It is embarrassing. We had President Lula here recently that we still do not, it's embarrassing that we still do not have an ambassador to Brazil, one of our most consequential continental interactions, and we do not believe it important to have an ambassador there. What you see the administration engaging in is a type of presidential diplomacy that's dangerous, because you don't know what is being traded away. There's not an institutional approach to these things. There is not a considered and studied approach to these things. The other point of order would be a border commission. We have been calling for this for some time. We cannot afford to operate as if we are not in a controversy with two neighbors as it relates to our borders, one more exacerbated and prominent than the other, notwithstanding. But we have to understand that these are important areas that will require specific, dedicated attention. Our advent as a petro-state will require that we staff our foreign affairs ministries and our missions abroad with a cadre of competent professional diplomats that can advance our interests, and that who are knowledgeable enough and understand geopolitics enough to represent the interests of Guyanese and of Guyana effectively overseas. So those are some of the foundational issues that we'll have to deal with. And so training and capacity building would be a key feature. In my last budget presentation, I presented a 5-point plan, if you recall, that must attract our attention for the next year, and some of which I outlined above. And lastly, a proper, thorough migration policy. We cannot operate as if we do not have a migration crisis, and this current government seems to be bent on that approach.
One last question on this issue here, and it came from one of our viewers. Is saying that Africa has 54 countries. We have one embassy in South Africa, whereas Nigeria has the largest population in Africa. Would you establish more than one embassy in Africa? At least the person said one in Nigeria as well and one in Ghana, if possible.
Absolutely, and I raised this issue in my last budget speech, that we have one mission in South Africa, and it is a consulate. It is not even a high commission or a fully accredited embassy with staffed with an ambassador, and that is absolutely unfortunate, and it has to be corrected quickly, because we seem to be focusing on this presidential type diplomacy that I highlighted earlier. There is a sloth to appoint people. And you know what the tragedy is, Dr. Hines, is that I know
Dr. Rose,
rather, my apologies. You know what the tragedy is, Dr. Rose, that we have competent men and women who are capable of being appointed tomorrow if this government had that desire. But the reality is that this current administration sees diplomatic postings as reward for favors rendered, as in the case of Mr. Charandas Prasad. And you see how abysmally and embarrassingly that ended for Guyana. So when you think that diplomatic postings are a reward for positions, for favors rendered, you overlook capable and competent people, and you prefer to keep that mission staff with junior staff rather than to appoint people to pursue the national interest. And that is unfortunate. That is myopic. And the only thing that it does is injures Guyana reputation on the world stage. And we have to correct it, and correct it quickly.
Very good. Now, let me go back to the topic here, the crisis in Gaza. Where does your party stand on that?
I think we've been very clear. We've been very, very clear. And the leader of the opposition would have indicated that our position has always been that it's a two-state solution. We are also very clear that this this conflict, which and this is my personal view, it has to stop. It has to stop. This is no longer appearing to be a conflict, but it is just the slaughter of women and children and civilians, and it is an extremely troubling issue. And you know how feverish a pitch it has reached, because no less a person than the Vice President of the United States of America has called for a ceasefire. And so I think the world over is voicing its concern and voicing its condemnation for what we see happening. The slaughter of the vulnerable men, of vulnerable women and children cannot, in a civilized world, be condoned. It simply cannot by any party. And so, you know, we will continue to keep the people of that region in our thoughts and in our prayers, and we'll continue to call for peace to prevail. There are no winners in war, and I think this is demonstrating that so vividly, that I hope it serves as a cautionary tale for the world over for years to come, so that we avoid that type of situation happening again. It's extremely emotional. It's extremely taxing on us to see what we see. Children being slaughtered, you know, babies dying. I read today that even as Ramadan begins, that hunger is rampant, that people are on the verge of starvation. And in 2024, it cannot be. We have to do better as a human race.
President Ali has been on the forefront of the national stage, calling for an end to poverty, an end to hunger, or reduction of poverty, reduction of hunger, and also calling on the CARICOM states to reduce their food import by at least $5 billion by 2025. He has also called for efforts to stop climate change or to arrest climate change and to become energy sufficient and so forth. Do you support him in those policies?
I support those policies. My difficulty with this lies in the fact that President Ali says one thing abroad and he practices something different at home. And that is not to be condoned. The last statistic puts Guyanese at 58% of Guyanese experiencing food insecurity. What am I telling other countries about food security when my own population, 58% is food insecure? What am I telling the world about climate change and climate resilience when I am executing a massive infrastructure project that ignores sea defense as a first priority, that ignores critical infrastructure as a first priority? What business or what moral right does he have to tell anybody anything in that regard? You have to do first at home before you have any credibility to do anything abroad. It just doesn't work that way. And so when you begin to talk about Guyanese becoming food secure, then you have the moral authority to tell anybody else about food security or about curbing food insecurity. Look, you have farmers right now in Barnwell North that can't farm in peace because today the outfall is blocked up, the next day it is unblocked, and their farmlands are flooded. So there is no concerted effort to bring all of the farmers in Guyana on board this effort. There is still discrimination there. So until Ali can eradicate discrimination, even in the way that technical assistance and support is given to farmers, we have no hope of decreasing imports. Look, now you buy imported oranges. A few years ago, that was not a thing. Now we are importing plantains. A few years ago, that was not a thing. But the reality is that The demand is growing, but the mentality of this PPPC administration remains stagnant. And so they're unable to compute and to understand, Dr. Hines, that discrimination actually costs a country something. There's actually a formula to see how much money a country loses because it actively practices discrimination. So we will not have, we've already revised the 25 by 25 index, and we're going to have to continue to revise it, because until this government understands that you can only fluff about for so long, they'll continue to speak these grandiose things internationally and fail locally. Because let's not make any mistake, Dr. Hines, Guyana is not center stage, Dr. Rose, Guyana is not center stage because of anything that we've done. It is simply because of what we have. And so unless we together begin to understand that that is what is making us attractive on the world stage, and put our heads together to decide how we are going to make use of our quote-unquote 15 minutes of fame for the benefit of all Guyanese, we will simply go down the road of the Dutch disease, which unfortunately, when you look at the indicators, is already happening here in Guyana.
APNO signed the oil contract in 2016, and for 2 years, no one called for renegotiation of the contract. But today in opposition, APNO is calling for renegotiation. Why?
You'll recall it was Barry Jagdeo that first said that he would renegotiate the contract.
Right.
And so in any contract, and I think we've made this very clear, there are provisions for parties to have discussions. This is not an issue that we have not spoken on extensively, and we've been very clear that we have to employ all the mechanisms at our disposal to get the best for Guyanese. I think that same oil contract that the AP and UFC has signed is what is seeing this bonanza of funds that the PPP is currently misusing happening for our country. And so importantly will be the agreements moving forward and how we are able to design those so that Guyanese can have the maximum benefit of what is our resource, and that the arrangements reflect a true partnership in national development.
As we are speaking now, there's no government in Haiti. And CARICOM has remained as if nothing happened. Why do you think CARICOM did not act before? Or why stay CARICOM to so long to say anything or to act or in any way, shape, or form?
Sorry, I was muted. I served two stints at the CARICOM headquarters, and this is many, many years ago. And Haiti has always been on the agenda. Haiti has always been on the agenda. What we have seen consistently is a failure by CARICOM to address, for example, in a holistic manner, the challenges of Haiti. And frankly, this is not just a CARICOM problem. Haiti is a Western Hemisphere issue. You go to the history of what is happening in Haiti, and you see that CARICOM has attempted over the years, sometimes less enthusiastically than it should, to bring some semblance of order and support to Haiti. You will remember that it was the David Granger-led administration that, pursuant to our treaty, the revised Treaty of Chaguaramas, pursuant to our obligations under that treaty, that afforded Haitian nationals visa-free travel because they are a CARICOM member state and entitled to such. And that was revoked promptly by President Ali when he came to office. So you see a particular type of hypocrisy characterizing the interaction with Haiti. Now, of course, people seek to simplify this matter as if to suggest that every person has a right to show up and they will be granted entry. Of course not. A state, as a sovereign state, reserves the right to refuse somebody entry on other grounds. That has not changed, and that will not change because, as the communique issued at the two CARICOM heads of government ago, that they want free movement subject to the caveat of national security considerations and of people being a charge on the public purse. So this is far more nuanced than some people are making it out to be. And certainly a state would reserve certain rights in accordance with its immigration laws to itself. But you know what's interesting, Dr. Hines? You'll recall, Dr. Rose, that the premise for revoking this visa-free travel was trafficking. I think 10 Haitian nationals were found in a hotel in Corriverton, and that was the premise used. If you recall, those people were also held for about 3 weeks at the Hugo Chavez Reintegration Center. And so now we're reading every day in the news about 20 Venezuelan women rescued from here and 30 there and so on. But you do not see the concomitant strictness with the requirements. And so certainly it's painting an ugly picture of this administration, and it really is laying bare for all to see that they discriminate. They discriminate against Haitians here in Guyana. And again, I have complaints every day from Haitian nationals. One man approached my office because he was married, living here for the last 8 years, went in to have his work permit renewed, and they refused to renew his work permit. What that would mean is that he would be in the country illegally and forced to return to that situation happening now in Haiti. So when Irfan Ali speaks on Haiti, I can't take him seriously, because you cannot treat Haitian nationals in Guyana poorly and then go on the world stage to advocate for Haiti. It is the same thing that this administration does with reparations. You treat Afro-Guyanese poorly, and then you present yourself on the world stage as the champion for reparations. The hypocrisy is nauseating, and it has to stop.
Okay, we'll move on to a commercial break right now. Ryan, take it off.
Globespan 24/7 is serving the community for over 2 years. We hope that the programs have been of value to you as we continue to connect with the issues and politics that matter to you. Support Globespan 24/7 initiatives by logging on to globespan247.com. Click on Globespan 24/7 talk shows and make a contribution. Your contribution will help to build a better platform for the communities. On Globespan 24/7, you can also download the player for Roku TVs, Samsung TVs, and Android TV boxes. You could also download the Globespan 24/7 channel on your Android mobile phone. Support Globespan 24/7 and also support the companies that support Globespan, such as TravelSpan and allfromonesupplier.com.
Unveiling a literary masterpiece, Challenged Sovereignty by Dr. Ivelaw Lloyd Griffith. This book demonstrates how drugs, crime, terrorism, and cyber threats converge, shaping the destiny of the Caribbean. 12 years in the making, this groundbreaking study unravels the complex tapestry of challenges facing the Caribbean, including regional analysis and compelling case studies. Grab your copy of Challenged Sovereignty by Dr. Ivelaw Lloyd Griffith with an exclusive 30% discount at the University of Illinois Press, or available on Amazon.com.
Once again, we welcome all our listeners back to Globespan Television. Tonight I have with us here Ms. Amanda Walton-Desir, Member of Parliament and the Shadow Minister of Foreign Affairs. Ms. Desir, let me ask you another question on Haiti. Why is it you think the government is treating Haitians badly? Is this in accordance with the CARICOM freedom of movement of people?
I think it is for the government to say why it is singling out the Haitian nationals for particular treatment. You know, Guyanese are free to come to whatever conclusion the evidence supports. You have evidence of clear discrimination. You have evidence of unequal treatment. Even the courts intervened the last time in favor of Haitian nationals here, and deemed a deportation order unconstitutional because this government flouted the rules of natural justice. And so it is very obvious for anyone who cares to see that the only difference between the Venezuelans that are fleeing economic and social crisis back home and the Haitians who are fleeing even more dire straits now, that the differences in their appearance. What else is any right-thinking person forced to conclude, Dr. Rose?
Secretary Blinken from the United States is in Jamaica as we speak, trying to drum up support for Haiti. My question to you is this: why is it something like this happening in the region? The regional leaders have to turn to somebody outside, like the United States. Why can't the leaders act, come to a conclusion, look, we will have to do X, Y, and Z to prevent Haiti from collapsing? Why we have, in other words, why we always have to turn to the white man?
Look, I don't know that it is a question of turning to anyone. My understanding of the situation is that CARICOM decided that it would convene a meeting of CARICOM leaders to address the issue of Haiti. And shortly before the meeting convened, the Secretary of State indicated that he would be attending the meeting. And so I am not sure that it is a case where they were looking to the US for a solution. I think it is imprudent for us to believe that the support of the US will not be crucial for a resolution of what the crisis is in Haiti. And so for me, the more persons at the table, the better our chances of crafting a longer lasting solution to the Haitian crisis.
The Haitian crisis was brewing over a year ago, this year. And like CARICOM did not see it important to act. They wait until the government has collapsed before calling a meeting. Now, what this tells you of CARICOM?
Look, I have been very, very clear, and if you followed my last missive on this issue, is that CARICOM has to get its act together as it relates to Haiti. I'll tell you what my concern is, Dr. Rose, that we as Guyanese learn from what is happening in Haiti, and that we understand that such decline and such breakdown is possible in this part of the world. And therefore, as Guyanese, we have to make sure that we don't set this country on a path where what you're seeing in Haiti and Venezuela, etc., becomes a Guyanese reality. That is what we have to focus on, because we have to get our own acts together before we can go out there to tell other people to get their acts together. And so for me, Haiti, Venezuela, and all of these declines that you're seeing ought to be a cautionary tale for us as Guyanese. It ought to say to us that we have to advocate for the establishment and the support of strong institutions, that we have to speak up against corruption, not conveniently, but we have to support and to call for and hold this government accountable for the upholding of our constitution and of our constitutional rights, and that we frown upon and make our displeasure known when this government abrogates and disregards the rights of our citizens, because that is, that is what precipitates decline. And so for me, the greater lesson is in looking and learning and avoiding the pitfalls that we see happening around us.
Now, you mentioned an important word there, corruption. When the APNU was in office, the PP said they were corrupt. Now the PP is in office, APNU said they're corrupt. But still, no one in this country has been charged for corruption. Why is it then that we speak about corruption against the other every time, and no one has been charged? Why is it?
Look, I don't know that it is correct that no one was charged. I think what happened is that those cases fell apart, basically, because, of course, as you know, cases require evidence, they require witnesses to testify, etc. And so I want to be clear, however, that there are some indicators that generally tend to assess where a country is going in terms of corruption. And I am happy that it was under the APNUAFC that we recorded our best rating on the corruption index. 2 years after the PPP took over, we declined again. And so those are some general indicators that are quite useful in indicating the direction and trajectory of a government. Look, there is no doubt, and any Guyanese following current affairs understands that this PPPC administration actively supports corruption. This is why they were voted out in 2015, among other things, because the institutions had broken down so badly. And it is just that from 2020 to now, we have witnessed an acceleration of that. I saw today where Irfan Ali is going after contractors that were awarded hundreds of millions of dollars for pump stations where works have not yet even commenced. But what Irfan Ali is trying to do is to lock the stables after the horses have bolted. Because you will recall that it was the coalition that pointed out that these contractors were not even qualified in the first place. And when, for example, the Public Procurement Commission would have written to the tender board requesting documents in accordance with the law to be able to assess the capacity of these contractors, the tender board told them clear, they're not sending anything. Why didn't Irfan Ali action that? Why didn't he, or somebody in the government, Ashley Singh or whoever, frown on that? Because that is where the decline and the decay starts. And so now it is manifesting itself with incompetent contractors, incapable of executing these projects for which they've been awarded hundreds of millions of Guyanese taxpayers' dollars, not Irfan Ali or Barjack Dio's money, and they are unable to execute these projects. And you know what will happen if these projects are taken from those contractors? They'll get off scot-free, because at the end of the day, it is a good friends and family and favorites club, and Guyanese will be paying twice for the same project.
You said the PPS voted out of office because of corruption. Why was APNU voted out?
Inter alia.
Okay, why was APNU voted out?
I think it is very, very clear by now, given what we saw in the recount, that APNU was not voted out of office. I think that ought to be apparent for anybody to see, because you know what, it disturbs me that we continue with this narrative as if the recount never happened, as if the recount did not reveal 49 ballot boxes without statutory documents, as if it did not reveal a mountain of inconsistencies and irregularities and anomalies. How is it that we are to operate as if that did not happen, is my question. Because to assume that the opposition or the APNUAFC was voted out is to ignore the fact of what was found during the recount. Because if you look at all of the valid votes, you would see that the coalition would have won those elections by a decent majority. So let us not operate as if the recount did not happen, is my admonition to everybody. It is foolhardy and it is dangerous because it is requiring Guyanese. It is requiring all of the people who are in that recount center. It is requiring them to disregard all of these facts and to stop at a time just before the recount. So let's not do that, because frankly, it doesn't serve us well.
Were the votes not counted in those 49 boxes?
I'm sorry?
Were the votes not counted in those 49 boxes without the paperwork?
Do you recall that there was a 4-step process, and that having counted all of the votes, there was to have been a further step to assess the valid votes from the invalid votes? Look, I think this is an old issue. I think by now every Guyanese understands exactly what happened during that period. And so to pretend as if Guyanese don't understand is to insult our intelligence. And it feeds right into this narrative that I see the PPPC administration pushing about who rigged and who rigged and who rigged. And they do that because they want to distract from their abysmal record of managing this economy and of being able to help Guyanese realize a proper life. We have to recall that under the AP and UAFC, Guyanese were able to enjoy a certain standard of living. Public servants were able to realize decent increases without 1 cent of oil money. Institutions began to work. And so that is not to be ignored and brushed away, and I will not allow it to be ignored and brushed away. I will be the first to say that not everything was done perfectly, and there were some things that ought to have been done that were not done. But I will say this, I will not stand and stifle my conscience to say that the PPPC administration is doing a better job. They clearly are not. The cries of the teachers would tell you that they clearly are not. The fact that they are content or were content to allow our students, our children to be out of school for 29 days tell you that they don't care. The fact that they continue to deny public servants a livable increase, an increase that matches the food inflation rate. The fact that they refuse to do it is an indicator of who they are. So for me, I'm not going to be distracted because it's a classic thing that they do, forgetting that democracy is both procedural and substantive. And they're failing on substantive democracy. And I'll tell you what they're doing. They're setting Guyanese up again for a particular procedural outcome because they continue to refuse to cleanse a voters list that is bloated by 126,000. And for those who think that this is some, some feat of wizardry that the PPPC is accomplishing, I want it to be made clear that they are doing this so that they could continue to enrich their friends, their families, and their favorites. That is all. That is the only reason they're doing it for. So Guyanese should not expect anything from this PPPC administration because they have nothing to give to Guyanese except crumbs and empty promises.
Now, I want to go back to something. You mentioned those 29 ballot boxes that did not have the paperwork to support the votes. Then why the government did not ask for those people to be charged who were in charge of those polling stations?
That's a question that you have to ask the PPPC government.
No, Upton was in office.
I beg your pardon. You will recall that at the end of that process, there were declarations and the government changed. You'll recall as well that it was the APNU AFC that wrote asking the commissioners, that wrote asking for a thorough investigation of the matter that GCOM refused to undertake.
Okay. Now, the other thing I want to say.
On a point of note, Dr. Rose, as we're on this, you'll recall that it is the PPP that has Mr. Lowenfield and others up and down a court steps. And 3 years after a trial can't commence, right? And then you have the vice president in the media attacking the magistracy, attacking the magistracy. How is that acceptable by any measure? Talking about the magistrate is frustrating the will of the people. The will of the people is expressed in the Constitution of Guyana, and that Constitution says that every Guyanese is entitled to a speedy and a fair trial. And it behooves any attorney representing any client to ensure that his client receives a fair trial.
But don't you think Apple should attack the magistrates too, because they're delaying the case every time it calls?
No. And I'm sure the attorneys responsible have spoken extensively on this issue. You recall adjournment after adjournment because the government wasn't ready. Witness statements were not ready. Please, let's recall these things correctly, because you see, it is important for the future direction of this country that we recall and record these things correctly.
Now, I agree with you on that, and I will mention this at this time here, since you're in the magistracy. Now, up Borbies, there is a female magistrate. A simple case, a guy stole a bicycle with somebody else. The guy get caught. Person got back his bicycle, but the person has been charged who stole the bicycle. It's 3 years now that case is going on. And every time the case comes, the magistrate postpone the case. That's gross incompetency on that magistrate. And the next time I'm going to call her name out, and there's another case similar to something like that. Every time the case calls, she postpone the case. Every time the case calls, she postpone the case. Why magistrates and judges don't clear the agenda that when you call a case, let it be tried? 3 years, a simple bicycle theft case. No verdict as yet. 3 years. And this woman goes about as if nothing is happening. There's also another case where cows are being impounded at police stations. Cows are starving for months and months and months and dying. And she keeps postponing this case.
Dr. Rose, this is an issue of the wider administration of justice. And we have to understand that to the degree that we wink when the administration of justice is undermined in one case, it has a ripple effect. Look, I read an instance where a police officer was acquitted after 8 years in jail awaiting trial. Trial hadn't even commenced. In no properly functioning country would that happen. And so there is a deeper problem, but it has to be addressed holistically.
I think the judiciary is incompetent. They should be the one policing these magistrates and these judges to see how they're trying cases. But like no one cares.
I don't agree that the judiciary is incompetent. I could not support such an assertion. It is hard work being a magistrate and a judge. And you, as a magistrate or a judge, you do not necessarily, and particularly in the magistracy, you do not determine the readiness to proceed with a case or not. The prosecutors have to be ready to proceed with a case. And so there seems to me to be the need for continuous education, for robust investigative capacity, so that these cases, you can have your case brought as quickly as possible and have a speedy trial. So there is need for improvement all around. And what we should be doing with some of this oil money is building that capacity and supporting our institutions. But this government does not seem interested in that.
While I support you in that, let me say this. I put the blame back on the magistrate and the judiciary. You know why? A magistrate should tell the prosecutor and the judge and the lawyers what time you need to get this trial underway. Give me a date. And when you set the date, don't come and tell me you're not prepared. The trial will go ahead. That's the function of the magistrate or a judge. Or when you go and say that, oh, I didn't have all the information, you said, tell me when you're ready to go along with the trial. And this is something that all magistrates and judges should tell the lawyers on both sides as to what. But not every time a case calls you postpone a case, a case calls you postpone a case. That's gross incompetency. And I will stick to that because I'm saying some people believe they have a little power, and Lord Acton says, absolute power corrupts absolutely. And everybody think that the little power they have, they can do whatever they feel like in the country. And this is what's happening with judges, magistrates, and other people at lower levels and all sort of administrative capacities. Anyway, that's another topic. Now let's move on to another important question, the border controversy. I know that APNU supported the government in Parliament on the stance against Maduro and so forth. Do you think it was handled properly?
Handled properly by whom? The government?
By the government in meeting with Maduro in the Grenadines, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and since then, Maduro has quieted down. Do you think President Ali handled that meeting properly to get Maduro not to issue any more threats?
Well, whilst Maduro is not issuing threats, Maduro is carrying on as he was with his program and his organic law. Look, we were very clear, at least I was very clear, on the deficiencies of the Argyle Accord and the declaration rather. And what we are seeing now is that Guyana has almost been forced into a particular position because nowhere have I seen from the government of Guyana or from CARICOM, as it were, a request that President Maduro desist from proceeding with the organic law. For heaven's sake, he passed budgetary allocations for our Essequibo. Where is the outrage? Where is the protestation? You know, I saw Irfan Ali exchanging gifts. What is that in the context of the fact that Maduro has not slowed down in any way, shape, or form his plans for the, as they call it, the Guyana Essequibo? Look, there was a trade fair recently in Panama, and the display booth of the Venezuelan delegation had the map of Venezuela with our Essequibo included in it. I got a photograph of it. I wrote to the Minister of Foreign Affairs asking that a protest be sent both to the Venezuelan embassy here and to the Panamanian government. I have not received an acknowledgement of my communication, much less.
Okay.
In fact, I received an acknowledgement that yes, we have received it, but no further word as to what action was taken. And I only received an acknowledgement after I called to specifically find out whether this correspondence has been received. And so, you know, we see a situation where CARICOM is getting the two people together, etc. But whilst, for example, Venezuela was loud in its condemnation when the British naval vessel had a stopover here on its tour of the region and made all kind of protestations, Venezuela is proceeding with its program for Essequibo, and there is not a word from our government. There continues to be an influx of Venezuelans into Guyana, and the government is unable to come up with a proper migration policy to address this. We do not have any idea as to the real numbers officially. We know unofficially there are about 60,000. And so the government is failing to manage this crisis. And I am saying to us that it will be to our detriment, because you cannot have a country of 28 million on your western flank and not understand that there is clear and present danger of a simple population transfer and a situation occurring where we settle people in the Essequibo and they decide, look, we're Venezuelans, we want to be ruled by Venezuela. And you lose your territory. History has those examples. Some countries, you might recall, closed some of their borders recently with Russia for fear of a soft invasion coming out of this Ukraine-Russia crisis that we're having. So there's a clear and present danger of this, that this government seems content to ignore because they truly believe that it presents to them an electoral advantage. And so you see a government that is willing to sacrifice the long-term future of Guyanese and is willing to subject Guyanese to the possibility that they'll be relegated to second and third class citizens in their own country so that they can hold on to power to do what? Not to give the average Guyanese man or woman a better life, but simply to enrich themselves and their families.
I will say this to you. I've learned a long time that government officials, whether it's PNC, APNU, or the PEP, they do not respond to anything you send to them. They do not answer their phones, and they do not return calls. So when I go to any government official and he or she tells me, I'm talking about public servants here, oh, I'm going to call you, I said, no, stop that nonsense. You will not call me back. Don't give me that jargon. You will not call me. I know this for a fact. No government official calls back anybody and tell them anything. If it happens, it happens. One out of every 1,000 public servants will do the call back. So I know whether it's APNU, whether it's the PNC or PEP, is the same thing. This is how the government of the public service in both governments operate. They
and
don't
so
return phone
change. We have to change that culture. And
well,
this is why hold on, Dr. Rose. This is why I keep insisting that we have to change this culture, because the system must work. The system must work. A Guyanese must be able to go into any ministry, and the system must be efficient enough and effective enough to have the concern of that Guyanese citizen addressed and properly addressed and addressed in a speedy manner. We do not have 1 million persons living in this country. There is no reason for us to be unable to effectively administer the needs of tend to the needs of our citizenry. So you're having something done should never be dependent on a minister calling you back or not calling you back. It should be the system working. And look, this is why, Dr. Rose, it is vitally important that we resist this cult of personality type leadership that this PPPC administration is seeking to put in place. Because Guyanese should not have to wait for a president to show up in an NDC for action to be taken. The system must work, and we must put our resources to making sure that the system works. Because unless and until the system works, Guyanese are going to end up getting the short end of the stick, because it will always depend on who you know. And that is a culture we have to break.
The thing is, I'm the public servants here. They do not return phone calls. They do not answer phones. And some of them tell you in plain terms, I'm not paid enough to work this hard. But that's something I'd say. But I've sent, when Abdu was in office, you talk about culture. Every political party talking about changing the work culture in Guyana. And when they get into office, they do squat. I sent a proposal to APNU, no response. I sent a proposal to this government, no response, to change the work habits in Guyana. And I gave them something comprehensive. Nobody responded. So you gotta leave it as it is. A country cannot develop if its people are not being treated and respected by those in authority, not public servants, ministers, everyone else, by these people. These people just laid back and said, you know what? I'm not doing squat. Let them try with that. Give it to somebody else.
Dr. Rose,
No
I
country
am
can
getting
develop
some,
that way.
Dr. Rose, I'm
Yes.
getting some feedback from my technical people that there appears to be a problem with your broadcast. Whilst they're able to see and hear you clearly, they are unable to see and hear me clearly. So I am not sure if your people could have that resolved.
You're being seen, but you're not being seen speaking, but we hear you speaking. Ryan, can you resolve that? You're being seen and you're being heard loud and clear. Ryan?
One sec. Working on it.
Okay. As we pause, I want all our listeners to know that we are broadcasting live, Globespan Television, and thank all of you for tuning in to Globespan tonight. It's a very, very elaborate broadcasting system we have here, and Ms. Amanda Walton-Desir is doing a brilliant job in explaining what's taking place and what's going on in the country at the moment. We're having some technical difficulties, but we'll be back on the air within a matter of maybe seconds. So again, thanks to all of you. As you know, Ramadan starts yesterday, and I wish all my Muslim brothers and sisters a happy Ramadan, and hopefully they enjoy the season, which is run for about a month or so. I also want to thank our listeners across the world, in the Caribbean, Guyana, and all over Europe, Asia, all over the world we broadcast. We even get correspondence from people in Australia, a handful of Guyanese there. So we are live all over the world, and hopefully we can expand the network as much as possible to all the audience globally.
Dr. Rose, she's trying to rejoin now. Just give her a minute.
Okay. I said we have a pause in broadcasting, and we hope to be back very, very soon. So just stay with us. Ms. Desir, you're back. Okay, thanks.
Yes, I am.
Okay, let's now turn to the budget. We're running out of time here, but we have a little more time on our hands. Let's turn to the budget. No budget in the world, in any country, cannot have goodies for everybody. What are some of the things that you think you like in the budget and some that you don't like?
Generally, the budget, as we have been on record as saying, is horribly skewed. And with over 50% of it going to public infrastructure. we certainly will always welcome relief for the pensioners and for school children, etc. But the problem is that we cannot be content with crumbs. And this government is giving crumbs to the people of Guyana, and that continues to be the point that we are making. You cannot have $1 trillion budget and give crumbs to Guyanese people. It seems as though it was a $3,000 budget, a $3,000 increase on old age pension, a $3,000 increase here and there, just really demonstrating how misplaced the priorities of this current administration, how misplaced their priorities are. Because, and I was heartened to see the caution, as it were, given by President Lula when he visited. He said he noted the impressive infrastructure development, and he would imagine that the human development to complement that is happening. Now that is statesmen speak for, listen, you had better pay attention to developing your human capacity, etc. So we see that absence, or the skewing, as it were, of the budget in favor of infrastructure. And we continue to warn about the dangers of that. We continue to warn about the dangers of that type of spending when you have an efficiency gap of 41 cents. It is foolhardy. You have to make an effort to build capacity to execute such a massive PSIP, Public Sector Investment Program, before you attempt to execute, because it is resulting in wastage of taxpayers' dollars, hard-earned taxpayers' dollars. And so instead of a balanced approach to growing this economy, you see one that is terribly skewed. And Guyana, unfortunately, and Guyanese are who will pay dearly for that type of mismanagement that we're seeing today. The average Guyanese man or woman will tell you, frankly, that their lives have not gotten any better with all of this oil money in the economy now. And since this PPPC administration has come to power, the money is distributed among a few, the friends, families, and favorites, as we call them. And so the average Guyanese man or woman isn't benefiting any. And so in the midst of plenty, there continues to be poverty. And that, by any stretch of the imagination, is unacceptable. I hear the president, Irfan Ali, saying, oh, 2027, and he somehow is stuck on this year 2027, as if it is by magic that sound economic development will happen. This government is wasteful, Dr. Rose, and it is concerning, because I'll give you another example. Silica City. You recall there was a huge opening and a grand launching of all of this, and their photos of infrastructural work beginning. And then we hear a month back that the master plan for Silica City is now happening. In which part of the world do you build a city without first having a master plan of that city? In which part of the world? Okay. And so this is the type of negligence that you see being exhibited with the money of the people of Guyana. So they believe they could do what they want whilst Guyanese starve. And we have to speak up against that. And Guyanese have to be cognizant of that reality when they go to cast their votes.
Cost of living. We have limited time, affecting everybody in the country, especially the poor and downtrodden. What would an APNU government do to help the people at a lower level offset the cost of living?
Well, we have indicated a very long time ago the need for social programs to assist people to weather the storm, because it is a fact, it is true that there's a cost of living crisis around the world. But what is different about Guyana is the fact that we have the resources and the ability to do better for our people. What is different about Guyana is that we have a relatively small population in comparison to the resources at our disposal. And so you're not comparing like with like, and therefore more responsible for the people of Guyana. We have called for a long time now for subsidized transportation for school students. We have called for a subsidization of basic food items, much as you see happening in some countries. Look, I use the example of President Lula again. You saw before now in his last 2 consecutive terms as president of Brazil, you saw the expansion of a lot of the social programs, and he referenced that they will be going back to those successful social programs those programs which were able to substantially address structural inequality, particularly in rural areas. And so there is merit to considering a social safety net for Guyanese, because it is possible. We have the fiscal space to do it. What we have to accept is the reality that we do not have a government that is willing to do it. It is unfathomable to me. And the government, this administration, is so out of touch with the people of Guyana. When asked whether he could live off of $85,000, which is what the average public servant or the public servants at the minimum bracket of wage earners in this country would get, the vice president rather had a quite flippant response. Oh, well, let's pay everybody $500,000. Oversimplifying the matter in a manner that insults the intelligence of Guyanese, instead of providing cogent, coherent answers to what are legitimate questions. Guyanese need help. Help is possible. The PPPC administration, however, is not willing to help Guyanese. What they are willing to do is set up a structure where they go into certain communities and they hire the influencers to influence the communities to vote and to support them. That is what they do, instead of going out there and making the lives of Guyanese genuinely better. But, you know, like I said, we mistake the silence of Guyanese sometimes for complicity. I believe that the PPP knows very, very well that they will receive a shock come the next elections, because Guyanese, our eyes are opening. We are beginning to see the hypocrisy. We are beginning to see that more is possible. We are beginning to see that Guyana has the resources to invest in proper primary health care, to invest in the education of our children, to invest in the retention of our teachers. I read where they are bringing nurses from here, there, and everywhere. That money that they will be paying people to relocate, why not pay Guyanese nurses properly so that they can stay home? People just don't pick up themselves and uproot their children and their lives to move to a completely different place for the fun of it. They do it because it is an existential matter. Why not come up with a proper retention strategy to retain Guyanese at home? No, we don't see that. We see a government that prefers to allow our best and brightest to depart, and to bringing people who will have communication issues here for years to come because English is not their first language. That is the type of government that we have. We see a government in place that's willing to jeopardize the education of our children further, for the plummeting our already concerning scores at CXC and at Common Entrance in terms of particularly science and maths, etc. And they're content to do it. They're content to do it because this PPPC government is afraid of an educated, enlightened population.
Thanks, Ms. Desir. We come to the end of the program. Your closing remarks.
Well, thank you, Dr. Rose, for having me on the program. Thank you for the invitation. It certainly is a pleasure it was my pleasure to sit and to speak with you, and for me to close by saying to all Guyanese that we have to envision the Guyana that we want, because it is completely in our hands, whether we want to believe so or not. I'm saying to us that it is completely within our grasp. I also want to say to my fellow Guyanese that it is important that we continue to advocate for a better Guyana. We continue to advocate for the building up of our institutions. We continue to advocate for a livable wage for our public servants. That we continue to raise our voices and to speak up about inequity and about inequality. We have to understand as Guyanese that when you create a class of the haves and another class of the have-nots, that is what leads to social conflict. When Guyanese don't feel as if it doesn't matter how hard they work, that they are unable to afford 3 square meals a day. And then they look across there and there is Mr. Big Man, you know, lavish preparations. And, you know, another segment is hungry. That is what precipitates decay and social disorder. And so I'm saying to us, let us not wink at these things because maybe a political party that we support is in power. Because we support them, we should be able to hold whichever party we support accountable for delivering a good life for Guyanese. Gone are the days where people of Guyana must be used as political pawns, but the people of Guyana must hold any party, including mine, accountable for delivering a good life for Guyanese, for delivering the quality of life for Guyanese that they are entitled to, Dr. Rose, given the wealth of resources that this country enjoys. I'm saying that it is possible, but we have to reject those who will come to sow seeds of discord amongst us on grounds of race and ethnicity and who did what when and who did what in the 1960s. Rubbish. The time for all of that is done. We have to build a new Guyana. We have to put our shoulders to the wheel, and we have to do it together, understanding finally that this world is now a global village. And unless we preserve our Guyanese-ness, unless we preserve this land, unless we do everything in our power to make sure that Guyanese are not relegated to third and second class citizens in their own country, we will be consumed. And so, Dr. Rose, I want to encourage us to begin to vote on issues, to begin to equip ourselves with the facts. If we don't understand something, you have Facebook at the touch of a button, you have Google. You have all of these tools that are now available to our population to get information. And in all of our getting, let us get understanding so that we are able to vote on issues, so that our children and our children's children could really inherit a Guyana that we could be proud of. So when we sit in our rocking chairs, we could say, you know, yes, we made the right decision, and not sit in a seat of regret.
Thank you, Ms. Desir. Well spoken, well said, well done. Tonight, I want to remind all public servants in Guyana, throughout the country, to remember this. You are the servants of the people, not their bosses. You are the servants of the people. So please serve the people with respect and dignity. I also want to call on those in authority to increase the retirement age from 55 to 62. The reason being, at 55, a person retires, that person is in their prime with all the experience in the world, and they will leave Guyana and go and give that to another country. Third, the internet system. It is not working. It is the poorest system in the world. I could call Trinidad, I don't have the interruption I'm getting. Barbados, Jamaica, all the Caribbean countries I called, and I do not get interruptions. In Guyana, you can't talk for even, you can't even speak for 5 seconds. Reconnecting interruptions. So I'm asking those who control the internet services to improve the system. Why are we getting mediocre systems like this here in the country? Why? St. Lucia, I spoke to someone the other day. I spoke for almost 45 minutes, no interruption. Grenada, the same thing. Trinidad, Barbados, Jamaica, the same thing. Why in Guyana, you can't even speak for 5 seconds, there's an interruption. We need better internet services. And I'm calling on all the magistrates and judges to stop putting people on demand for years. Try the cases within a matter of 6 months or so. And all magistrates should know that they should try cases as speedy as possible. Justice delayed is justice denied. We must stop this callous type of behavior. Not because you have the power and influence, you sit there, you in your high horses, you can do whatever you want to the people. Someday in the future, the people are going to rebel. Someday they're going to rebel. Bear that in mind. So again, those are some of the things I want to mention. And I will say that I love my country. I love my beautiful Guyana. I can't wait to visit it again, hopefully very soon. Once again, to all our listeners, a special thanks to all of you for tuning in, and to Noir Singh for making this program available, Devin Bissoon, Ryan Gobin, our technical directors, and to Miss Amanda Walton-Desir. Thank you very much for coming to the program tonight, and hopefully you express yourself extremely well. I will say that. And I hope everyone who listened to you going to send us remarks and questions and so forth, but we will try to answer them to the best of our ability. Thank you.